Welcome back everybody, I'm BaroFix and today we are reviewing the ExtremeRate Hall Effect joysticks for the DualSense controller. As a disclaimer, they reached out to me and sent me some pairs to test and review. They also sent some other products for an upcoming video, but other than that I'm not being paid, nor do I even have an affiliate link for their products. This review strictly contains my own opinion. For those of you who don't know yet, Hall Effect joysticks is a type of magnetic joysticks where the main benefit is that it is much less prone to having stick drift issues. Another similar but newer technology using magnets is TMR joysticks, which I have made videos about in the past already. Currently, there are 4 well-known brands that offer their Hall Effect or TMR joysticks. These are Jinful, K-Silver, Favor Union, and Hallpie. And then you also have GuliKit, but GuliKit is more of a rebrand of Hallpie because they come from the Hallpie factory, so I don't really count that one. The only difference is the thumb caps that are included. So there isn't really a whole lot of competition in this joysticks race, so to speak. So when I first heard about ExtremeRate Hall Effect joysticks, I was very excited. I thought we would finally get more competition. But you can guess my disappointment when I opened the sensor and I saw this yellow piece of plastic in there. This indicates that it's actually just a Jinful rebrand. ExtremeRate offers 2 variants of these, and they differ in their resistance. You have the light blue one, which has less resistance when you're moving it around. It's 80 GF, which stands for gram force. It's the amount of force required to push it to a side, measured in grams. And then you also have the purple one, which is 120 GF, and it's supposed to be more similar to an original Alps joystick. I would say that less resistance may be ideal for competitive shooters, as it reduces the fatigue over longer gaming periods, and you can also move your camera or scope faster from one side to the other due to it having less resistance. Now, Jinful themselves are also offering these lower and higher resistor joysticks, so ExtremeRate hasn't brought anything new to the table yet, because both of these joysticks, the light blue one and the purple one, they already existed, just in a different color and a different brand. And Jinful has been going through like different iterations of their Hall Effect joysticks. They are well known after their 3rd version, where they heavily improved their circularity performance. From the label on the outside of the sensor housing, it seems to be a V5 or a V6 version of the Jinful Hall Effects, and these are great by themselves. They do not have a terrible circularity that the older versions like the V3 or V2 had. By now I'm familiar with Jinful, so I know what to expect from these newer versions of Hall Effects. So I'm not really impressed or wowed by the performance of these ExtremeRate joysticks because I already knew what they were going to perform like based on the Jinful. Now, I don't have any fancy or advanced tools to test the specifications of these joysticks in depth and display graphs on their latency or their response curves. If you are interested in these analyses, I highly recommend the videos of Metal Plastics Electronics on YouTube. He has incredibly in-depth videos that cover the specifications of the sensors, with proper tools to actually measure them and display them. It is safe to claim that these ExtremeRate joysticks have the same performance as the one from Jinful, and Metal Plastics Electronics has covered the Jinful ones, but not the ExtremeRate ones. So you can watch the Jinful videos and still understand that this applies to the ExtremeRate ones as well. I've seen too many YouTube comments in ExtremeRate's installation video about this, so I want to get it out of the way first. Probably the biggest controversy of these joysticks is that they use a flex PCB to calibrate the joysticks. For like 20 minutes long in their guide, which is over an hour long by the way, they demonstrate how to calibrate the joysticks using their calibration board. This PCB does all the calibration for you. You still have to set it up, but you don't need to calibrate it later on in an external website like the DualShock Tools GUI that I've shown in a different video. However, by installing this calibration board, not only are you spending more time with the installation, you're also risking more damage to the motherboard itself, especially if you're inexperienced. And you also spent like 10 times the amount to calibrate the joysticks, because via the website, you can do it with like 2 minutes. But to calibrate the joysticks with the PCB, in the video, they were busy with that for like 20 minutes. So is it really time effective and cost effective if there's a free website available? Well, I would just pick the website. In all my previous tutorials for the DualSense and the DualShock 4, I've always used the DualShock Tools calibration website. It's simple to use, doesn't require extra soldering, and what I appreciate the most is that it's free and open source. Now, this website was released well over a year now, but before it existed, you had to use third-party calibration board like these to make magnetic joysticks work. Otherwise, you couldn't calibrate them. So I was curious. I asked ExtremeRate, why did they go back in time to rely on the calibration boards if there's now just a website available? I think their response is justified, but there is a lot of nuance and I will try my best to explain it. The website claims that there is a chance that you can brick your controller and that it is not reliable for any damages caused to the controller. Now, bricking a controller just means it becomes unusable. Your motherboard is just dead. ExtremeRate explained to me that they don't want to take that risk for their customers. And I understand that. So that's why they opted for their own solution. The problem with this reasoning is this website is generally safe to use. Yes, there is a risk, but this is immensely small. And if something happens, it's probably something you've done wrong yourself. Now, I'll just briefly explain like how you can actually brick your controller. So first of all, during calibration or even after calibration, if your USB controller disconnects, nothing will really happen. Like it can happen during a calibration and you can just plug it back in, it will still work. Now, if your battery disconnects, and again, I don't really know how your battery would disconnect if you're calibrating because you're supposed to have it assembled. If you're calibrating with the controller disassembled, that's something that you're doing wrong. That's not on the website. But let's say your battery disconnects while you are calibrating. Nothing will happen. It's fine. Just plug it back in, plug the USB, it'll work. Now here's the moment where there is a chance for your controller to be bricked. It is the exact moment, the split second that you press save changes permanently. It only takes like half a second maximum. And in that window, if your USB cable disconnects, oh no, actually, no, it still won't be an issue. If your USB cable disconnects within that half a second, nothing will happen unless your battery is 0% charged. And then the second thing, which is again very unlikely if your battery cable disconnects during that split second. I don't think that has ever happened to anyone. The USB cable, I can understand if that disconnects or maybe your computer crashes. But during that half a second window, the chances of something happening that can break your controller is very small. And as long as your battery is charged and connected, you have the controller assembled like you should, you're safe. Nothing will happen. So if you are going to use the website, just have like some charge, like at least 10% on your controller and it should be fine. Then you shouldn't ever have to worry about bricking your controllers. And another misconception I've seen in other reviews is that the website is only a third-party software to calibrate and it will not move over from one PS5 to the other or even a different computer. This is false. First of all, it's technically not third-party. The code that is used to calibrate the joysticks, it's already stored inside of the controller's firmware. The only thing the website does is it accesses those bits and it overwrites them. So it overwrites the values for the calibration. And this leads to a new calibration that is stored on the controller. This means that you can bring it from one console to the other without issues. You can even bring it from a computer to a different computer. And you can use it Bluetooth or wired. Everything is possible because it's stored on the controller and it will stay there. This is essentially what the purpose of save changes permanently does on the website. It saves it to the firmware, allowing you to use it on other devices. So knowing this, would you rather save yourself the hassle of installing the calibration board or spend an extra half an hour perhaps to set it up and not rely on any website calibration or third-party calibration? To me, it feels like ExtremeRate missed the mark on this one and they're too late with this product. Because the included Flex PCB, it would have been great like a year ago, but now it's not necessary anymore. And the only thing it does is bumping up the costs for the kit itself. And at the time of recording, these Hall Effect kits are the most expensive compared to the other brands that offer Hall Effects or TMR joysticks. So it's hard to recommend this one. This brings me to my next point, is why did they opt for Hall Effects if TMR is objectively a better technology to use for joysticks? It's more accurate, it's less prone for magnetic interference, it becomes less hot, and it uses less power. And in some cases, TMR has less latency too, but that really depends on the sensor. Conveniently, actually, Jinful, you know, what ExtremeRate is rebranding, they also make TMR joysticks. So why did ExtremeRate not sell these instead? The only reason I can think of is costs, and many people will likely not notice the difference between Hall effects or TMR joysticks, as both of them still have the same benefit that they work with magnets instead of, the default potentiometer-based joysticks. So for the average gamer, I don't think they will notice whether it's Hall effect or TMR joysticks, which can be a reason for them to not choose that, but instead go for Hall effects. It's a fair point, they can save some costs, but it does narrow down the competition, because if a cheaper option, an objectively better option is there, then why would I go for the now €10 more expensive Hall effect version? It's something that I struggle a bit to see like who the target audience is for, because I don't think a repair technician or a store is gonna buy these if there are cheaper options available. And if it's just your average gamer, it's the first time that they solder, they want to get into the magnetic joysticks, I would assume that they would go for the best joysticks on the market. And after doing some research, they will still find out that Hall effect joysticks from ExtremeRate, even though it is the most expensive, TMR is still better. So they would still choose TMR joysticks over Hall effect joysticks. So again, I struggle to see like who this product is for. Okay, so I was just editing this video right now and I want to look back on their product page, and I did see here 4 FPS and fighting game players, so it seems that that is their target audience for these joysticks. But what I would say is that this PCB, it still introduces some sort of delay, because there is a chip on here, and whether it is minuscule or not, there is gonna be added delay. So that they say a faster response time, both in the description and in this photo here. Jinful isn't really known for their faster response times. Yes, it is possible to have that with Hall effect, like Favor Union has it, but the Jinful ones, as far as I know, do have a higher latency, which is something that I learned from Metal Plastics Electronics videos. So if you are a competitive person, I would not recommend this, because I don't think that it's a faster response time that you can get with either original joysticks, potentiometer based, or just TMR, which is better than both of them. I think there's room for improvement with the packaging. The joysticks themselves are thicker than the box that it came in. So if anything hits the box, the sensors will have most, if not all, of the impact. I would prefer to see better packaging that protects the joysticks and also keeps the pins straight, because some of my pins were very crooked, and there is the middle pin of the sensors that is 90 degrees bent. That is supposed to happen like this, that's for the Flex PCB, but the rest that I had, they shouldn't be bent like that. I already bent them back off camera, so I can't really show that here. For this review, I opted to use the light blue version, which is the one with the lower friction, because I never actually used one of these before. I always used the regular one, and I want to try them out. And I gotta say, these joysticks, they feel incredible. Like, I really like the smooth feel of them, that I don't really need to put any pressure on them to move around. So here's a side-by-side between the ExtremeRate 80GF and my custom TMR joysticks. So if I just give them like a small tap, or a bit harder, they already move to the edge immediately. But with this one, I'm trying to give the same amount of force, but it's not going anywhere. These have a lot more resistance. So that's something that I actually really like about these joysticks. And I also think that the buttons, L3 and R3, they feel very crisp in the ExtremeRate ones. And comparing to one of the Halpai or the Ghoulie Kit joysticks, I think the buttons on these feel a lot more crisp. I've had quite some issues with the Ghoulie Kit ones or the Halpai ones, because the buttons just randomly starting to fail, or they don't really feel that similar out of the box. But I'll do a sound test here and you can hear how they feel like. And this is a DualSense Edge, but this has Halpai joysticks. And you're going to immediately hear the difference. The left one, it sounds very muffled. That's something that Halpai still hasn't managed to fix. The ExtremeRate ones, or Jinful, they sound very crisp. And this one has my custom TMR joysticks, but they have the button for the original Alps. So this is how an original controller would sound like. So again, the ones from ExtremeRate, they feel very crisp. So I did 2 installs on separate controllers. One of them is according to their guide using the Flex PCB, and I calibrated with that. And then for the other, I bent the middle pins back straight and I installed them like how I solder any other joysticks. But this one I calibrate using the website. And the reason for this is that I wanted to time my installation and my calibration time, not counting the time that it takes to desolder the old joysticks and assemble the controller back. Of course, the times can vary per person, but also per install for me. So if I just install the joysticks as I normally do and I calibrate using the website, I get the controller in a playable state much faster than I do if I use the calibration board, because I have to install the calibration board separately and I have to calibrate it, which is kind of a pain. So if you have these joysticks, I recommend bending the pins straight and just using the website. But at that point, if you're not using the Flex PCB, you can just save some money and you can buy directly from Jinful, or you can upgrade to a TMR joystick instead. And it would still actually be cheaper. I think I've made my opinions clear of these joysticks. I have no complaints of the performance because they work very well, but the 2 decisions to have Hall effect joysticks instead of TMR and relying on a calibration board instead of a calibration program or software, it makes me believe that this product arrived a bit too late. It would have been really nice to see this product last year when there wasn't a calibration software and when TMR wasn't around yet. But currently there are much better and cheaper alternatives with easier installation steps. And because ExtremeRate is a rebrand of Jinful, I do expect some value paying a bit extra. However, currently I don't see that value. If I compare it, for example, to GoodieKit, who also has a rebrand of Halpai, they add their own thumb caps. And honestly, I do like their thumb caps. I prefer it over the original one, but it's not for everyone. So to those I would say, save your money, don't buy GoodieKit, buy Halpai because it's the same performance, but with a different thumb cap. With ExtremeRate, it's difficult to say something similar. It's like, well, you're paying extra, but what do you really get? You get a Flex PCB that's more of a hassle anyways, and I don't recommend it. But that's it, you don't get any thumb caps. The packaging isn't really that great either. I would personally recommend to just go for Jinful if you want to go for Hall effects. That said, you can get TMR for the same price, if not cheaper nowadays. So again, the Hall effect, it's still a downgrade. I want to thank ExtremeRate for sending me these samples to test and review. I want to stay true to myself and give an honest review, whether that's positive or negative. And in this case, I just cannot recommend these. I have purchased many ExtremeRate products myself in the past, but I think this is one that I will likely leave out because better alternatives are available for cheaper. If it is possible for ExtremeRate to ditch the Flex PCB and to lower the price, that's one step that I really recommend them to take because currently it is far too expensive to be even worth looking at. As I said at the start of the video, ExtremeRate also sent out some other products for me. Those aren't review samples, but I requested them. That's because I saw some YouTube comments. They were asking more videos about modding controllers. So that's why I'm doing this. I want to see how far can I actually go. What can I put into a controller to make like the Frankenstein? So if you want to see more videos like these or you have your own ideas, please leave them in the comments because I am open to suggestions. And I'm going to see if I can do that in a future video. So with that said, please subscribe so you don't miss out, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.